if you've ever worked in food service, you know what it's like to work a bad shift, but I'm sure you always have that one that you always remember because of how particularly bad it was. For me, that was 4th of July. I was working at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and yeah, it was definitely just the worst shift I've ever worked there, and I worked there for about 3 years. During the pandemic, essentially, I started around 2019, left there around 2022, so definitely peak like pandemic, pre-end, and then pre-pandemic, and then after the pandemic. But I worked at a restaurant called Twisted Witches, and this is about almost 5 years ago now. Yeah, 5 years ago, and I was recently promoted to lead. And 4th of July, it's a holiday. It's already one of the busiest days of the year, and I was like I said, I was promoted. I had to help run the kitchen, make sure everyone's like doing their job. The people who aren't like management, basically me too. I'm not just standing around. Help out wherever I can. You know, Figure out like, oh, like this, we need to make more of this thing, and this, we need to get these meats cut because we're the only place in the park that had like fresh ingredients. One of the only places. You gotta, get all the condiments need to be refilled, or like someone needs to start doing the dishes. Just making sure that stuff gets done, whether it's me or someone else who's not busy. And I came in probably the time usually around like 10 or 11 a.m. Something like that, and you always get a little sheet that says like who's scheduled to work at your building each day. And let's just say there was like, I don't know, like 10 people scheduled. There wasn't that number, but let's just say it was. I would say that day probably like 5 people originally scheduled called out, and a good chunk of them were like management. So instead of like having my usual like group of people who already know like our building, we were understaffed. And you know Six Flags is usually pretty good about like once you let them know, like they'll send more employees to go help you. But a lot of times those employees are from other restaurants. They don't really know what to do. It's not their fault, right? They haven't been trained in that building, so they don't know more like certain like stuff it like supplies we need, or how our kitchen necessarily works, or like what role they need to fill in. They can't make a sandwich because that takes a whole training in and of itself. So before we even like opened the doors, we were already like behind, which fucking sucked. And yeah, like it just I'm probably promoted for like not even a month at this point, and I had other management call out. And normally, there's like probably like 3, 4 of us working in the building, at the same time. So we're all looking at different things. Maybe one was on a break or a lunch, and now I have to coordinate with like my breaks with the other supervisor, who's above me. I'm a lead, and the supervisor above me. I had to coordinate with her to make sure that someone was always available. And of course, I still had to, help make the food. Um, yeah. So, but usually I can probably focus on like 1 or 2 things, right? But I had to just make sure like the whole building was running. Me and my supervisor. And at some point, like it's busy, right? We open, and it was an endless stream essentially of guests the whole day. But probably at some point, like right before I went on lunch, like this one my customer walks in, she ordered like 18 sandwiches. And keep in mind, these sandwiches all take around like probably like 2 minutes to make, because you put it together, right? And then you have to, no matter what, unless they ask, you have to put it in this little like oven that closes for like 45 seconds, if I'm remembering correctly. Then you got, yeah, so it just the whole process usually takes about like 2 minutes to do it. And she ordered 18, and they were not all the same thing. I think about like 10 of them were the same sandwich with minimal modifications. It's like what I mean with that is like they can't fully customize it, but you can just be like, oh, I don't want this one heated, or I don't want tomato, I don't want lettuce, like stuff like that. So like the first 10 were roughly the same, and then the last like 8 were like different sandwiches, and they all were like this one no tomato, this one only no onion, this one. It's like it just along with other people like coming in after that, and the lady was very smug about it. She came in and was like, I have a big order, and the one thing, she was understanding. I was like, this is gonna take a while, so you know we can't stop, so I have to just make sure that I don't mess up this order 18 sandwich order either, because the last thing I want is to have the lady come back and make this take even longer. And yeah, at that point I just look at the other people who were there helping me, and I'm like, okay. I was like, I will handle this. You guys just handle like any new orders that come in. Make sure we don't fall behind. And if we somehow clear it, like you guys can help me finish this. That didn't happen. I made all 18 by myself. And yeah, it fucking just terrible. And then um, you know, throughout the day was just like that. Like that was I think I went on my lunch right after that. And if it like you get like a 45-minute lunch at Six Flags, it's like that I blinked and I was back, It yeah, so from then on it was just that was like the worst customer of the day. Then like I said, it was just a constant stream. Like it just felt like it never ended. Like that line was out the door the whole day. Because in my thing, you had to walk into our building, and it just felt so unrelenting. And eventually it got to a point where like I have a bunch of workers who don't know like our building, and they're just standing around because they don't know what to do. And I'm just like, I had to be better about like, hey, you stay on the dishes even though there's nothing there. Like the second a dish comes back, you wash it. This guy's like on the trash. This guy's sweeping or whatever. And then because they're so busy, it's like okay, now the cashier is also calling out orders and handing them out, making sure everything's as smooth as possible. Everyone had like a task essentially, like it's as small as it would be. And you know, of course, like at some point during this, no one was particularly rude. Luckily, they all understood because many times it was just me making the sandwiches, many, many, many times. And a lot of people were calling me like a one, saying I'm a one man band, and you know, stuff like that. It felt kind of cool. But then because we have ingredients, but obviously naturally we run out of things, and if I'm the only one that knows how to prepare stuff or make stuff, which is when we run out, we run out. And at some point, I tried to cook more meat for our like our steak sandwich. We have a cheesesteak, and I turn around and I think one of my employees were like, something burning, and I look and it's just like meat like bubbling from burning over, and I had to just take it off the stove and just throw it away. So I didn't even try after that. And eventually we get to close to closing, and I look outside and the line is just still out the door. So I had to like take a second, call the you'd call like the main building of that area. Each area has like buildings that are like connected. Like you're all basically like on like the same. If you need help, you call them. And I called, and it was the Johnny Rockets there, and had to call the assistant manager from over there to come just close the line. Meaning he just stands at the back of the line and just says, like we're closed, like you can't join the line. Um, so yeah, I'm glad he did that. He knew the assignment. He has no issue, you know, telling people that, because sometimes people just want to be like, oh, I want a refill. It's like, no, you're not getting a refill. Go somewhere else. Like we're closing. We're done. And they want to sometimes have an attitude about it, and he had no issue dealing with that. So I'm glad he did that. Definitely saved me some grief there. And it stopped letting people join the line. And I felt like I don't know, like I survived like storming like Normandy or something like that. You know, like I was like, oh, I blinked and it was over. And yeah, once that door like finally closed, it's like we finished cleaning and stuff, and like normally I feel like a lot of relief. I just felt like dread and like exhaustion. Like if my feet were hurting, like yeah, my brain felt fried. I didn't. Yeah, I did. Like a sandwich sounded like the most unappealing thing to me at the time, and it's like the worst part was right. This I think this is like like a Sunday or something, and I was still scheduled the next day. And I knew it was a long shot, but I asked that manager if I could just miss because I was so out of it. And he said, "No, we need you." And I was like, "Okay, understandable." I called out sick the next day. Fuck that. I needed a personal day. I just mentally needed a break. So, looking back at it now, it's pretty funny. The time absolutely wasn't. I always say I think I lost years off of my life from working at Six Flags, and this day probably contributed the most to that. But like I'm sure like it taught me how to deal with like high pressure situations, and I remained calm most of the day. There wasn't no crazier thing than that big order I mentioned before. And if you're out here, if you're listening to this and you're working food service, like salute to you. You're a fucking soldier. You deserve a medal of honor as far as I'm aware, because food service is absolute hell. And it's such a. I feel like it's such a commonality, in people, especially it's like, yeah, a lot of people get that as like their first job. You just want to make some money. You're younger, you're like, I want some cash to spend on things. You know, I'm sure if you're still here, you've had a shift like this, you'll never forget it. So was mine. So, if you have that, feel free to share it. We all we can all trauma bond over that, over our shit. Yeah. So if you're doing it, thank you for listening. Take care.